Musing Corridor, a little snippet on Instagram. But I just want to share some insight into a vision I had last night or early this morning, however you want to perceive it. A super cool insight. What happened for me was energetically, I wasn't sure what was happening, but I turned into a star, basically. And there were plenty of other stars out in the galactic corridor, and we all kind of shifted and transformed and created together a bunch of little star beings. Appeared like a diamond, a gem, and it lit up to form kind of our own personal lightsaber. And source, God energy, whatever was on the other side. And then this diamond. And I wasn't sure if the diamond was created due to a bunch of people that had experienced near-death experiences or in human design reflectors. So I wasn't sure how this little gem was created, but it was kind of one of those two things I sensed. But what was really cool is it brought down spiritual truths into our dimension, or it kind of had people that weren't being spiritually truthful kind of come into their beingness of that spiritual truth. So it was actually super cool, kind of a vision dream. I truly hope that happens, actually. But I've been bringing the cosmic highway into your earthly reality or realm for a few weeks. I do my Sunday lives on my webisode series I called Change Your Stars. So this week I'm actually going to do the portal of the imagination, the realm of the shamans, or other worldly dimensions. And I feel I've also did my series called Secrets of the Other World. It's in my Musing Corridor. It's part of my online library of courses and a lot more, actually. So I'm always striving for insight and curiosity. I get bored really easy. I love to stay curious. Last week, I talked about questioning everything and staying curious, which I believe is important in the physical world, because a lot of what we're seeing isn't in alignment with what we're being told. I've been watching different snippets of different countries, their media, and even what they're showing about what's happening here isn't in alignment. So just stay curious. You kind of have to dust and clean yourself off. We just had a magical full moon in Leo and Aquarius, which also helps clean up the cosmic clutter. So there's all kinds of cool stuff happening out in the corridor. But just know that the information is actually just information unless we actually put it into action and kind of experience it. So always staying curious is kind of the center point of vectoring, I guess, for me. It's just how that works. And by the way, thanks for all the views. I'm super grateful for that. If you watched it on YouTube, please subscribe. And I also need you to ring the bell because it's all about those algorithms, right? So as we journey and we add to this cosmic soup, I've spent most of my earth journey in the school of Ayurvedic medicine, chakras, astrology, Chinese medicine, sacred geometry, shamanism or indigenous technologies. I work with light, tuning forks, sound bowls, essential oils, herbs. I do rituals all month long. I live in a fairy realm, in a fairy enchanted garden. I always am following the cycles of the moon. That's just the reflector part of me, which I really didn't even know I was a reflector until somebody brought it to me because I'm always paying attention to the moon. So my intention is actually just to assist you in exploring different ways to create insight into your personal beingness, your star grid or that blueprint. I call it your codex or your inner codex. But thanks for tuning in and thanks for listening. I appreciate that as well. Where I talked about the soul, the body, the mind, and the spirit on my website or my webisodes. Last week I coined it climbing into your skin. Everything really is about the heart, not just the physical functions of the heart, but also the emotions and the thoughts being holistic, and more importantly, the spiritual aspects. Spirit manifests everywhere and into everything, from a rock, a crystal, the moon, and so much more. The beings from the other realms, for that matter. So, awareness in all of these things is actually key. It's an access point and an actualization. So, I work with the energy centers along with the Chinese elements and the elements in the earth, or even the galactic corridor, if you will, the star grid, or I call them space coordinates sometimes. And they're just all a unique piece of your puzzle. So, we all have a congress of voices inside of us, and sometimes they turn into our outside voice. Sometimes I don't know what voice I'm listening to, my inner voice or my outdoor voice. And sometimes my inner voice becomes an outdoor voice. So it's always in this chatter, the voices in my head. So sometimes they become a global voice as well. And we all have a spiritual congress in the realm of our spirit. It's kind of a global frontier in a way. I like to call it a fortress. And I like to get outside or into my fortress. And we have to have we have to have a conversation with our mind. The mind is actually our middle challenger of telepathy, how we channel and get information that is otherworldly. And just know that awareness is always self-aware of the awareness. We generally just don't share our awarenesses because we don't want people to think we're a little crazy or a little woo-woo. But hey, I finally have climbed into my skin and I'm in the 0 meter. Also, if you've ever seen that video about dating and redheads, being a ginger on the crazy scale. So I am absolutely the highest on the crazy scale. It's actually about dating. And anyway, it's actually pretty funny. But today in my God Universe corridor, I want to talk about the ability to receive, not just in the physical realm, but also in the realm of spirit. And just know that love in itself is authentic. It has to be in its authenticity, because that's really the only true power that there is in God Universe. It's not the love of power, but overall it's the power of love. It's always going to override any corruptness in our village. So we tend to separate the conversations and the consciousness inside of us, even in spiritual dimensions and what that looks like. But just know that every aspect of our awareness is aware of every awareness. So basically, we're always self-aware, whether we talk to it or not. It's just sometimes we put these things under the rug because we don't want to deal with them. It's usually our lower field of emotion generally. So if you live from and even for your heart space while on planet Earth in the school of Earth, with your spirit eyes, or the eyes of God that we all have, and the richness and the fluidity of your heart, these lands within us have this magical ability to receive and open up. But most people are givers. So usually givers attract receivers and receivers attract givers. So you kind of have to flip the switch, basically, what that looks like, because we have these polarities inside of us. So this is the seat in the round table, the Parliament of Congress, that creates corruption within the scales of our peace system. So if your heart wants to get in front of your peace, your inner peace of your heart space, you actually have to see if your inner judge inside of you, because we judge ourselves, right? We become judgmental. So we have to get past that judgment and manifest it into reality. And it's going to actually rule out all those laws that we create inside of us. Inside of us, this aspect is the sign of Venus. Or the planet Venus, the sign of Libra, which Venus is actually traveling through the village of Capricorn right now. So we're not really open up to receiving this physical realm judicial system of radical reform in a way, because our heart isn't open to it and it doesn't want to receive it. Capricorn's more of the authority figure right now. That's why we're having the corruptness it's cascade. It's like the tower is falling over because we have Pluto and Capricorn, and Pluto is going to tear down anything that doesn't align with the heart and create some authentic heart boundaries. So I'm kind of excited for that. I often wonder if that's what my dream vision was actually really about. But it's this aspect that stops people from opening up and trusting is kind of in this space. It's how we commit to partnerships. I shouldn't say commit, but it's the actual marriage and the partnerships. That's Libra. It's the marriage to ourselves, which I totally married myself. I bought myself a wedding ring because I wanted to be real to myself, love myself authentically, right? So it's often also associated with the kind of love, obviously, that you'll open up to, along with your ability to receive that love. It's probably why I married myself. So it's a part of our soul's aspect where we've been that will actually judge us on what we are willing to receive or open up to, just in order to manifest and create in our earth school of this reality, in order to receive whatever it is we want to receive, whether it's the love of your life, an amazing career. You actually have to be open to what this looks like. It could be money, whatever it is, whatever, if you want to cook an amazing meal. I love to cook, especially if I have all day to marinate on what I want to cook. That's the Gemini side of me of what I want to cook in my heart space. It's just having the good organic raw materials to create all of those things to build in my garden. So if you don't open up to receive, then you really can't manifest in reality. So it creates a block of your manifestation, which is actually can be an emotional stronghold or a mental stronghold or just an energetic block. It's all in your heart space. So you kind of have to talk to your inner village to see what part of you is corrupt inside of you. It can be a person, but I always look to myself first, my inner village. But I also recommend you explore your outer village or even the global world, stuff like that, whatever that appears like. So Venus isn't really about love all in itself. Venus is about if you're ready to receive and open up to that love. And it's kind of a curious, funny part. It's that Venus always has this reputation of love, but it's actually the relationship of being good in relationships. So if you've ever met a Libra, they're always judging things. They really believe that they are the court system in the physical world. They're about fairness and law and order, those kinds of things. So that's kind of what Venus and Libras actually do. They're judging the aspects of love all the time and relationships. That's why it's like creating peace or justice is always being judged. And the scales of Libra, if you looked at the symbolism of Libra, always kind of going up and down and kind of weighing in on things or not on things consistently because you want the balance. So the scales kind of are weighing in on each side of our heart's aspect, our inner heart, our outer heart, what that looks like, and just considering what they're weighing in on back and forth multiple times. So that's kind of how our mind needs to stay curious is, how do we open up to things if our mind is always kind of playing games, keeping us away from literally climbing into our skin, which would be our heart center, our heart centric, because our heart actually is the only voice we should actually attune to. Because if our heart's settled on the inside, we can actually open up and kind of weigh in on the outside what we want in our reality, whether that's, you want to bring more passion and charisma into your life story. There's nothing else to consider in our consciousness stream, the river of energy that comes in and through us. There's no details. There's no round table or congress. We just have that conversation with ourselves if we truly want it or not. It's the village voice of our heart. It will literally light up inside of us. So this is the aspect of keeping peace in our village, also known as the water element in the Dagara. It's peace, reconciliation, clarity, getting in the flow, the stream of the river. So I do cowrie shell divinations. It's also an aspect to get you in your flow, especially this year's being a water year as well, at least in the Dagara cosmology. So it's the part of us that's always weighing in on the odds and judging things if they're going to work within our heart's desires or not in those desires. But it's actually, more importantly, it's the fairness, it's justice, it's equality, being equal. It's the win and only win perspective of things. So things need to be a win-win. However, a lot of times, and I see this all of the time, and I mean a lot of times, there's corruption of the judge inside of us. It's not in the zone of peace. Maybe it's looking out for the interest of our heart space, that win only side, or maybe there's some corruption and it's only bringing in unqualified strangers or experiences or people, ruling outside of what our heart really wants. So a lot of people, probably a plethora, suffer from an inner corrupt system of their own justice, of their own inner peace. It's literally a shift show. So you always have to stay curious. And this is the area that will actually betray your heart space. It's not the curious aspect or the state of your mind. It's this dishonorable judge not being honorable, basically. It's your spiritual history. It's your light code. It's the experience with the energy of just receiving and opening. I like to put a lot of things on the altar in the realm of spirit. So you kind of have to experience the art of balance. And that's what really will determine if you have equality, two sides of the same coin, within the upper and the lower states that we're in, just weighing in on us. So it's kind of responsible for all of our relationships to everything in life, whether it's a plant, an animal, a person, a career. It's just the relationship. It's not just romantic by any way. Libras are kind of associated with that. Supposedly the most fun because they love two-way relationships, but you also have relationships. For me, it would be a relationship with Italian food over my relationship with fast food or even Chinese food. So there's a part inside of us, inside of every one of us actually, that literally has to manage these relationships to everything. It's basically being judged, or a judgment to determine whether or not there's peace in our inner corridor. So if it's going to disrupt, create adversity or a challenge in our insides, that's when you need to turn it down and just not be open to the reception of it. It's our inner court system in a way. It's our peace within justice. So we have to go back and kind of have this conversation, and, it's like a debate system on why we're not in love with the idea or we don't want to open up to it. And generally, if you open up to something that your heart's not invested in, it's going to be like the falling towers, basically. So there's some questions that you kind of have to ask your heart. Is it equal? Is it fair in your heart space? Do you deserve it? So it's kind of how our heart kind of has the conversation. Is this what your heart truly wants? And a lot of times in my experience, when you ask your heart a question in your soul garden, maybe you're starting to date, and you ask your heart if this is the guy that your heart was looking for, the exact guy that your heart wants. Ooh, then you're going to notice that your heart gets kind of nervous when your mind gets involved, and it will interject with all these crazy ideas, often saying something like, I hear this guy comes from this fantastic car and this big house and has a bunch of money. Well, actually, what difference does it make? Who the frick cares? That's my zone, right? So it's the exact match of our heart, which is Aquarius, the frequency we frequent. And we all have these aspects inside of us. It's just where they play out in our corridor. So if it's a match at what your heart tunes into, maybe the dude is rich, who knows? Your mind can literally take you off track. It's kind of like having lawyer that's really great, or maybe some judges, and the voice in your mind sways you away from the rhetoric that's creating the chaos. And what happens is you just don't tune into your heart because you have some corruption and some judgment going on and taking bribes from your mind, maybe. It's not going to lead you to happiness. You know, those are things, they're labels, the car, the house, or whatever it is that you're having the conversation with. If you're not asking your heart, if you truly want it, if you're not really in love with the person, you're really not going to have your inner truth, your spiritual truth, to be able to receive and open up. So when your mind, where I tell you to stay curious from, kind of deviates from the voice in your heart, the only voice the mind is actually representing inside of us, it's the peace inside of us that has to throw down the gavel and bang, to create order in our court system. So our mind's just a distraction that's going to hold us in contempt, kind of playing games with your heart space. Now, I'm sure you probably think I'm a little cuckoo, and that's okay with all the voices and characters going on in my head, but I already told you this is the village I live in. And also, every person on the planet has a multiple personality disorder. We have all of these voices talking inside of our head. We just don't have any order in our inner court system. So we have to bring these conscious states into our awareness, into a correct order, to open up and receive. So this energy can actually come from the lower planes up into the higher planes, and from the higher planes down into the lower planes, or dimensions, whatever word you want to use. But in order to open up to receive in the world, it's the point where our heart actually has to open up and receive. So it's the heart's desires. Those are the results. But a lot of us sabotage everything in our story of our soul grid, right at the aspect of receiving. You might be able to manifest something, but you don't get to open up to the big prize because we're not accepting, because we get in the way of our own village. But maybe you haven't really even thought about that. But if you want something greater than you already have in your earth experience, you have to actually open up bigger than you ever have in order to receive the biggerness. So it's like if you want a bigger hamburger, a big fat juicy burger, you actually have to open your mouth really wide to get that in there, right? So the universe has this cosmic way, for example, of getting us to open up. So if you want to manifest and create the love of your life, but maybe you have to relocate to another aspect of the world, you have to have a conversation with your heart and say, am I open to jumping game and opening up? And if your heart's into it, your heart will get rid of everything and jump grid and go to another dimension for that love space. But a lot of us get stuck in the opening and receiving. It's like this constant replay of the same story over and over and over. We go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, just kind of weighing what do we want to do? Listening to more evidence from our curious mind inside of us, keeping things interesting, only getting confused about whether or not this is what we want or not. Am I open to that? Do I want to receive that? We really just don't know, but we're not asking any of these questions. We're not talking to the voice of our heart, the only person we should talk to for the truth. Another reason people have a hard time receiving and opening is because we're skipping over our Merkaba, the different triangles and the aspects of the Merkaba, whether we're coming from the physical realm or the spiritual realm, energy or matter. That means you're just having a hard time opening up in general because you didn't create a boundary around yourself. Like if you just don't trust it, like things that are too good to be true, your village kind of knows that already. The tree of life I just was staring at on my necklace. But if you're not listening to the voice of your heart and something doesn't feel right, you really don't believe it's going to work anyway. So you just feel like you don't belong there. You're in denial of the conscious stream. And your mind has a total village of voices that are objecting and playing mind games with you. Or maybe you have a corrupt judicial system in your mind. And the moral of the story is, if you cannot open up to something, there's a damn good reason for that. When I was younger, probably still do it now, actually, when I have to think about it, I used to think I had a challenge with my love life. I love people. I think people are fascinating. I think they're amazing. I probably saw the light in them that they didn't really recognize they had. There's an aspect that we all have called the etheric mirror. I just wasn't looking on the other side of the etheric mirror to see the shadow side. That's where that sits, you know. So, but what happened for me is I had a hard time opening up, and I thought it was myself, which, you know, I couldn't open up. But what was happening for me is my heart knew, for some reason, I was failing at listening to what it was saying, and I would talk myself into doing things that really weren't in alignment with my heart space, my village voice, which we all have. So I was literally stuck, and it just finally dawned on me, if I tune into my heart space daily and ask my heart if it wants to be in this situation, if my heart said, no, I don't want you there, not right now, because time and space. And once you're honest with your inner heart space, you know, and you have those conversations, then it's easier to open up, because your heart will start guiding you and directing you. A lot of people get stuck in relationships they don't want to be in, whether it's a work relationship, a marriage, a partnership, whatever it is, because, you know, we're codependent. We don't want to be alone. But when you're alone and you spend time with yourself, then you can start tuning into the voice of your heart, and you can start allowing your heart to know what it wants, just having a direct conversation with your heart space. And you don't need the lower vibrations and frequencies of oppressing your heart and, you know, being ashamed or judging yourself, because you're authentically the only person you're really hurting is your heart space. So, you know, your mind will hide evidence from us. It will, you know, sometimes we have to shut off our mind. And there's an aspect that keeps us from opening up and tuning into our happiness and our joy and our peace in our hierarchy of virtues. But what you have to realize, there's an aspect inside of us that we all have that will protect our heart space. And that's the ability to open up and receive what's in our inner world. You know, we don't want to be hurt by not opening up. So sometimes, you know, we just don't open up. And there's other aspects of us that are telling us that, hey, you might get hurt, right? So like I've said before, it's just being aware of different states of consciousness and the awareness. So if your body says no to a certain food, you should actually listen, right? If your ego gets angry at a stranger, you should tune in. If your inner judge, the piece inside of you, refuses to open up to receive something, there's an absolutely damn good reason why you shut that off. So these are just some intuitive guidelines that you can follow and tune into. But I always tune into my heart first. What does my heart have to say about it? Sometimes I just smile at people. Sometimes I wink. I don't judge. That's just something I do. I think that's why people have the ability to open up freely to me. It's because I'm analyzing, probably dual channeling between my feelings and what I'm sensing. It's like on the grid or whatever that looks like. But if you have challenges opening up, just know that your heart space can't lie. It knows a fake when it sees a fake, when it feels a fake. And you can only open up if you're in full integrity. And a lot of people have a hard time opening up because they fail to protect their heart space. So they can't open up. That's just how it works. And they don't really have a backup plan on how to get out of a story, especially if something goes wrong, because they fail to perform like a background check or a backup on the person. Maybe that they're thinking about dating. They're asking all their friends before they're actually having the conversation with their heart. because they jump into the story without protecting their heart first. What their soul is protecting them from by default, because you've done this before and you've just are not opening up to receive the treasure box, the gift sometimes. So you kind of have to go back and forth and work through all of these states of awareness, but not skipping your heart is that's just the place you have to start. And a lot of people will jump in the sack right away if they're dating somebody. They just jump in, do the business before they've even contemplated or whether or not they should open up to the person in the first place. You're just kind of throwing the bathwater out in your entire ability to be open and just jump straight into manifesting a marriage or whatever it is, creating something together before you kind of tune into the synchronicity of what your heart actually wants to express. You haven't asked the Wonder Woman inside of you if she's really open to this marriage or open to co-creating something with somebody else. So just like I said before, a lot of people can't open up, including myself, because you get stuck on what your mind thinks about it. It's like that idle chatter going on in the mind, which I know I've always said, stay curious, question everything. That's a true thing, but you actually have to go to your heart space and just ask the heart, do I want this or do I not want it? Now, there's kind of a disclaimer when it comes to the heart. Opening up doesn't really work. Sometimes just knowing everything's going to work out and be pleasant. So just remember, knowing after you manifest evidence, not before, because evidence will come later after reality and after integrity. So in order to go forward, you literally have to open up and not know how it's actually going to turn out. I actually wasn't, years ago, there was somebody I started dating and I wasn't really interested, but there was a voice that came in that said, give him a chance. And I was like, what the hell? So I did, but it wasn't knowing it was going to work out. There was a lesson imbibed in that. So some people, they're willing to open up without the guarantee. That's kind of what I was going into for there. But if you do that, you won't manifest, because that's not how God does it in the universe. A guarantee just means that you're not manifesting. You're actually trying to control the situation. You're not trusting. So you're not allowing the law of attraction to bring in the flow of the opportunity. And you're probably removing all of your free will somewhere. And you can't do that for somebody else by controlling the experience. So it basically will guarantee pretty much, it absolutely does guarantee that whatever it is you're trying to create and manifest isn't going to happen. So a lot of people, like I said, myself included, we actually just don't open up because we're too busy trying to make the next best thing manifest, which is so funny. So when the opportunity comes to open up, whatever it is, you're too busy and you don't recognize it's there, so you don't accept it, you don't receive it, and you don't even realize that you've missed the circus, right? So it's kind of like being on a hamster wheel or watching cats run around. You're just kind of in the same cycle, in the same pattern, doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're never growing, not just in abundance, but just growth in general. You're not growing spiritually or whatever it is, because you're not giving time and space to receive the harvest, which is the fall, right? The season of the fall, the harvest. So in my experience, a lot of situations that I've observed, because I'm an observer looking through a different dimension generally, is if things aren't creating correctly, then your heart is not invested in it. Your heart will get exactly what it wants based on the integrity you put there, plus more. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if, in other words, God will literally ask you to open up to something new, something exciting or foreign, right? Something you're not used to, in addition to what you think you want. And this is kind of the magical aspect of life. It's more where miracles and magic literally happen. You really will get what you want, plus and then some. But what happens is, in order to receive and accept it, because that's where we kind of block ourselves, is we have to be open to receiving it in general. And you have to be open wider than you ever have before to have the greater galaxy or the corridor bring you what you've never had before. It has to be bigger than life itself. So, in my experience, if you follow the cosmology of numerology, you'll always get what you wish for and then some. But if you're incapable of opening up to the and more part of it, the bigger galactic corridor, you might end up turning away the entire creation. So, how do you know if it's right? Well, your heart, that voice in your heart, knows it's right. You have to weigh everything against your heart. Just like the Egyptians did. I work a lot with Egyptian colors for healing. They're different frequency and vibration. I'm not going to get into those. But in the Egyptians, they always took care of the inner queen, made sure that queen was happy and lighthearted, and that the heart really wanted it, no matter what the cost, because we kind of get stuck on the money thing. But if our heart is feeling scared or timid or shy or feeling heavy, or the courtyard has to close up, right? Close the doors and kind of step back and judge the situation maybe as guilty of disturbing your own inner peace, then you really have to have the courage to just throw the fish back out in order to get the next big fish, because we're in this consciousness stream of this river, so we can actually level up. So when your heart's on board and your heart's excited and it's ready and you're open and you're ready to get naked and just jump in the hot tub of unlimited possibilities, then you're actually free to move on to the what I would call the spiritual approval of our higher self and sense into the village of the corridor of the great spirit, the oneness field. So with all of that, Ashe, and thanks for tuning in today. And hopefully I'll see you this Sunday for Change Your Stars. I'm going to be talking about the Shamans Portal. It will probably be a few webisodes in my series. That's the portal I play in the most. It's the realm of the imagination, the beings, the elements, and so much more. It's truly a magical space to be in. So with all of that, again, Ashe, I'll see you on the other side.